Good afternoon, my name's Genevieve and I'm Head of Corporate Tax for Blick Rothenberg. It is Budget Day 2024 and I'm delighted to be joined today by Mahmood, Audit and Advisory Partner and Head of our Mid-Market Audit team. So Mahmood, thanks very much for coming to talk to me today.
Pleasure.
The Chancellor has only just sat down after about 75 minutes, it felt longer. So I'd be really interested in your initial reaction. Tell me, what do you think about what was said today? What do you think your clients are going to be thinking?
I felt that he talked about a lot of areas that are quite important to our clients: investment, raising capital, growth. So I thought those were all important areas that he talked through. I'm not quite sure whether there was any substance to what he actually talked about in terms of actual measures. And I suspect that's what most of my clients will be saying. Will be saying, well, actually, there's not a huge amount for us in this sector. What did you think?
I would tend to agree. As a tax specialist, obviously Budget Day is the most exciting day of the year for me. But yet again, I've been left really disappointed. Yet again, this was not a budget for business. In fact, the mid-market was pretty much completely ignored. There was some super stuff for mega corporates with an extension to full expensing to leasing equipment, although no real detail as to when we might see that come into effect. And for the smallest of businesses, a welcome increase in the VAT threshold, albeit a little too late and a little too little.
Yeah.
The mid-market felt completely ignored. And to me, this is the absolute heartbeat of the UK economy. So I was actually left really disappointed again.
Yeah, I think I'd agree with you on that. There were a couple of measures that did get my interest for a moment or two. What he actually talked about how difficult it was for businesses to list in the UK, and actually I thought that was an important point that probably hasn't been talked about enough. A lot of our clients, when they're thinking about exit, one option used to be listing in the UK, and that's got harder. So the fact that at least the conversation is on the table, I think was helpful. Whether a £5,000 Britain ISA will make a difference, or whether he can truly unlock some capital with the pension funds, we'll have to see. So that, I think, for some businesses that are looking at exit, that could be interesting. But in the main, I think the other aspect that my clients will probably be a little bit relieved about is that they're facing quite a lot of increase in regulation anyway at the moment. There's a lot of changes to financial statements, a lot coming down the track, and actually the fact that there isn't that much extra that they're going to have to do might also be helpful to them at this stage. In terms of the leasing changes and the full expensing, I think it's a bit early to work out what that's going to mean, because that could potentially be helpful for some of our clients, I think.
Absolutely. I hate the phrase, I'm going to use it anyway, devil in the detail.
Yeah.
We can't get through a budget without using that phrase. Do I think it's going to make a material difference to our client base? It will make some difference. Will it make potentially a huge difference to shipping, aviation, possibly, really what I'd call the mega corps that are investing a huge amount that tend to be taken on leases. Will it affect property leases? I very much doubt it. So I expect that will be excluded. I think there will be a small collection of large businesses that will benefit and an awful lot left on the table. I think that the Chancellor could have done more for a wider mass of businesses. So one thing, Mahmood, that I think just hasn't really got any public attention at all is around actually corporate fiscal drag. So we hear the phrase a lot in terms of personal allowances and tax thresholds being frozen for individuals, and the fact that it's brought a whole heap of people into paying tax or paying a higher rate of tax. We never hear it spoke about from the corporate perspective, but actually the threshold that a company will start to pay 25% corporation tax rate has remained the same. And also the threshold when companies have to pay quarterly instalment payments of tax. I mean, that hasn't changed for as many years as I can remember. What are your views on that?
So this is one of the topics that we're talking to our clients about all the time. So lots of my clients are talking about how much of a burden it is having to pay tax so much earlier, and combined with the increase in interest rates, which is very, very substantial. Actually, it has a huge impact on some of our clients. There's a real frustration that fiscal drag that has impacted on them around the timing of tax payments is, there's just a real frustration around that. It's interesting, you see it in different ways. In the same way you see it with the audit threshold. So our colleague Andy Sanford has talked about this before, where the threshold for audit hasn't gone up for many, many years. So a lot more companies are being dragged into an increased regulatory burden as these limits are not looked at all. So it's probably one of the top 3 issues that I'm talking to my clients about at the moment when we're meeting up and talking about business.
So that's really interesting, because companies, I mean, PAYE is great. Individuals pay their tax monthly. Most people probably think, why shouldn't companies? But of course, a company's profit is actually only really ever decided after year end, after all the tax calculations have been done. So making them pay tax in advance, it would be very difficult for them to make an accurate estimate of their tax liability.
It is, and I think, and if I think about our client base, like a lot of most successful businesses these days, as they grow, they become international. And that means more companies, and that means effectively the way the legislation works is they're paying tax earlier and earlier. And I have a worry that could get worse in the future. At the moment, at least, they haven't talked about that getting worse, but it definitely impacts businesses much earlier than the headline numbers would talk about. So I think it's definitely something that is just problematic for mid-sized businesses. In the same way that while the employees' NIC cut, I'm sure, is very welcome, and clearly it's going to be very welcome for working people, it doesn't actually help mid-sized businesses at all. So the Chancellor talked a lot about more investment and more growth, but actually what are the measures that help our clients in the sort of mid-sized business sector? What are the measures that help them? And that's, I think, continues to be a worry for us.
It's a really interesting point, actually, the cost of employment. And this has been on my gripe sheet for quite a while as well. Yeah. And don't get me wrong, personally, super pleased as well about employees' NIC being cut. But the cost of employment in the UK is really high, and we see this a lot when we're talking to businesses that are coming to set up in the UK.
Yeah.
You've got employers' national insurance, an apprenticeship levy, auto-enrolment, pension contributions. We have a minimum wage, which obviously I'm a massive fan of, but the actual cost of employing people is really, really expensive in the UK. The Chancellor talked about a budget for growth and cutting taxes for growth. I would have personally liked to see employers' national insurance reduced to a more sensible level. Maybe that's 12%, preferably 10%, and really give businesses the chance to actually employ more people and to grow in the way that would actually support the economy.